Hi, I'm Charlie Guarino. Welcome to another video from the iChime community. In this month's meeting, we featured Security Business Architect for IBMi, Tim Mullenbach. In this meeting, we had a great discussion and a live demonstration on how to implement MFA on IBMi 7.6. What a great meeting it was. I think you're really going to enjoy watching it, and I do hope you can join us for future meetings as well. See you soon, everybody. Bye now.
Today is, of course, Tim Mullenbach, and I am thrilled. I am absolutely thrilled that Tim is joining us today. Thank you for that, Tim. Tim is the senior software engineer at IBM Rochester, where he spent his first 20 years with IBMi sockets and system TLS development team before transitioning to the security business architect, I should say, as the security business architect 7 years ago. Tim, it is such a pleasure to have you on here. I can tell you that this topic has drawn so much interest from people around the world. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can see everybody again. There we go. And Tim, I'm going to ask the first question to kick off this meeting. We have a lot to show and never enough time, as is always the case, as you know. But I'm going to start the meeting off with the interesting question, and that is like, what is MFA maybe? Why now? Why was it so important for IBM to bring MFA directly into the IBMi operating system? I think it's a good starting question. You want to start with that, and we can go from there.
Right. Well, thank you for having me. It's always good to talk about our MFA, or multi-factor authentication solution. Again, high-level definition, the whole concept is when you come into having credentials, something you have and something you know. In the case of a password, you know it. In the case of this in our case, this TOTP solution, you have a secret. So it's having two different forms of authentication credentials in order to get on the system. So you ask why now? Well, I would say we're 5 years late, but why was it important? Multi-factor authentication is one of the primary ways to help prevent with ransomware attacks. It's not the main thing, but it's certainly part of it. And almost all compliance and certification profiles require MFA. So from an IBMi operating system perspective, it wasn't good year after year that when customers would ask us for how they can deal with MFA, we had to say, go somewhere else. Well, we can't help you. We got nothing for you. Now, I know it started to roll out. Expert Labs had an asset solution that some people leveraged. There was a Power SC that was getting in place for IBMi, but it really wasn't hitting the mark at least 5 years ago when we were sharing it with different advisory groups. So we really felt it was important. The operating system itself had to play in the space because it was so important. So again, that's how we got here. Whether or not everyone can use ours, that remains to be seen, but we are at least in that space now, and we have an option.
I think it's important to point out what I've been reading about is that it is, of course, written by IBM, supported by IBM, and it's built right, it's baked right in.
Right. Yeah. That's our number one feature of you don't have to get any additional servers, agents, don't have to set up any firewall rules, no purchasing of anything else. When you get 7.6, whether you migrate forward or get a fresh install, it's available for the administrator to activate and then start configuring for user profiles, right away. There's not a lot of, when it comes to that perspective, a lot of setup that you need to do. It's just going to be there, and then is baked in at the lowest level. for good or for bad, you can't get around it. If you turn it on for a user, you can't avoid it, where I think with some other solutions, they face a lot of restrictions. They can't run in restricted state perhaps, or in other environments, that the only way you could provide that support was from the operating system itself providing it. And that's especially true for the sister solution here for SST DST users. It's separate from the operating system, very similar, and I think that was a space that was very difficult for anyone to come up with a solution without having it just baked right in.
So, and that's a very superior feature, I think, having that at that low level, DST and SST.
Yeah, I think there's use cases where you may not use our operating system version of it. You may be happy with some other solution, but you'll go ahead and use it for your SST DST environment because that's a gap you might have right now.
I want to just jump on something that you did say, Tim, and you said unless I heard it incorrectly, you mentioned for a user. Is this something that can be turned on for one individual user or a group, or is it one big switch for the entire system?
No, there's a big switch that just says the system is interested in participating, and that's going to change on whether or not you see an additional factor field on some of the prompt screens. But it is 100% user by user basis that you would turn this on.
That's a very powerful feature.
Yeah, and part of that comes from, we know it may not work for every user and the applications and the actions they take. So if we didn't have it on an individual user basis, no administrator would have ever been willing to turn it on. So you have that maximum amount of flexibility here and I think what I would anticipate administrators doing initially is focusing on their administrator users. They kind of perform different roles. They have the higher privilege, your all object, your SecAdmin, special authority, that you focus on. Let's lock those profiles down first, and then they start to pull in some of the other regular users, if you want to use that term.
And as far as I know, this was not done in a vacuum. I mean, you've gotten a lot of input from advisory boards and things like that. So hopefully, it's in implementing best practices and what the community really needs.
Yeah. We've, for almost 4 years worth of presenting to LUG, Common America Advisory Council, Common Europe Advisory Council. They've certainly seen this design and watched it evolve over those last 4 years. It mostly looks like it did to begin with, but there's a lot of differences from 3 years ago when we started presenting things. Again, one of the other reasons why we were able to go ahead with the project was we knew we couldn't ever provide an MFA solution that really worked in all cases for every existing application and every existing user. So we had to upfront say, that's not our goal, that's not the mission statement. We are going to provide something that has great value to some set of users and customers. So that's how we were able to keep going forward, and we've been fairly open with that the entire time with these advisory groups. So yeah, hopefully when everyone else gets a chance to use it, they'll agree that there is some value for them there.
And truth be told, as far as I know, 7.6 now is already GA.
Right, it's available. We've had some positive feedback from the beta customers who've used it. They've certainly uncovered a couple of questions and issues, documentation improvements, some other things. So I think we had a successful beta program there. But again, to this point, it's pretty much been positive feedback that's reached my desk.
Yeah, I mean, MFA, I mean, that's a topic or a concept that everybody certainly encounters in their everyday life, obviously. So it's not an unfamiliar concept. The fact that we can do it, and I know at some point soon we're going to be doing a screen share and you'll be demonstrating some of it, we're talking about some of it, but it's an important topic, and I'm glad we finally have it where we can start using it. So we're excited about that. Thank you. A couple of things before we jump into, I know there's some definitions that I want to just bring out. We talk about this TOTP, this time-based one-time password. You want to just talk briefly about that, about what that means? I guess it's self-defining, but what exactly is a time-based one-time password?
So there's an RFC that defines an architecture and an algorithm where you have a shared secret. So we'll have that shared secret as part of the operating system user profile object, and you'll put that same secret into a device. I usually use a phone. You could use an application running on your laptop. You could use fobs, credit card devices. There's all kinds of different devices that are compatible or compliant with TOTP architecture. So I have that shared secret, and using UTC time on the two devices, they can both generate a 6-digit number or TOTP token. So we start with the same number, the same secret. We run the same math using the same UTC time, and we should generate the same 6-digit number. So that's the core math and cryptography behind the concept. So then, maybe you will see it coming up. You'll get that 6-digit number from your phone or other device, enter that along with your password. They both arrive to the operating system. We'll verify the password, and we'll run and compute that 6-digit number ourselves at that time. And if they match, we'll agree, and there is a time skew, a deviation of, they usually are good for 30 seconds, but we'll check plus or minus in case there's a slight time skew. But so it's important to keep your clocks within, I generally say within 90 seconds. You should probably use an NTP time server, but you don't have to. I mean, it doesn't have to be down to the microsecond, and this still works.
But there's some leeway is what you're saying, basically.
Yes.
I guess that's a normal thing. That's great. So one thing that we did discuss, Tim, was talking about a CL command on a green screen. That'd be very helpful as a demo. And I think that's a good jumping in point right now. We can look at the green screen that you're going to be sharing, and you can just guide us through. I can tell you that this is new to most people in this meeting. So whatever you want to share and stop and discuss, that would be great. I also see that people are putting things in the chat. I haven't opened the chat, so somebody. Oh, hi Charlie. Okay, that's okay. That's that wasn't what I was thinking about. But I know, for example, Robert Andrews, who is another IBM security person, IBMi. He put RFC 6238. That's the RFC you were talking about for the
right. Yep. I don't have the number committed to memory these days, but yes.
Okay. Yeah.
So, all right. So I just signed in with just a plain normal user profile, and I like to explain things using green screen. I've been around almost since the beginning for AS400. We'll get into some navigator things, and that's probably what you'll use, but I just find the closer you get to the operating system and the objects, the more it makes logical sense, and then you can figure out what navigator's doing, because in order to make things easier, it kind of combines a lot of different things, and you don't realize maybe what it all did for you. Real quick, I'm just going to show, display this user profile.
Hey, we got a profile. I tried.
What I wanted to highlight here is the key. There are new user profile attributes. Now here it says, does a key exist? No, because we haven't set one up. And then there's some other information here. If you did have a key or you changed it, we'll let you see when it was last changed. authentication methods is the thing that turns this on for a user. If they have a key, you can change that authentication method to *tote-p, and that's what actually would activate it for this one user profile. And then we have this optional interval. That's one of the use cases where your applications, whatever you're doing, might not always be able to provide the *tote-p, so you can get a window where you don't have to provide it after initially having provided, and maybe we'll come back and see that. But I just wanted you to realize this is tied right into the user profile object, and we only say that a key exists, yes or no, because we'll never give you that raw key again. Once you give it to us, you can't get it out. So let me see if I can hit the right keys. So the green screen command to set up a key is change *tote-p key. And I'll prompt on that and prompt again. 2 special values. If you want us to generate your key for you, you'll do the *gen, and that's what I'm about to do. You could be coming with a device, a fob, that already has a key, and you can tell us that key. So you just type it in here, and then we would be, getting that key from the other device. In this case, we're going to create the key, and you'll give it to the other device. Okay, so here's the key up on the top. We provided in a credit card style because you may have to type it in to your phone, and it's always easier to do that than without the spaces. So without the spaces, that I can copy and paste that, and I'll do that real quick here to show you what that looks like. We have a recovery key on this screen. So you would also copy that off to another location. You might put that in a 1Password vault type thing. It can be used one time for a very brief period of time. Let's say I put this code in my phone and I drop it in the lake. And I gotta go get a new phone, and I didn't have a cloud backup of that application, so I can't get that key anymore. So instead of having to contact the security administrator and have them turn off the requirement for *tote-p to let you sign in without one and create a key, if you have your recovery key, you can put that in as your *tote-p value instead. And for a couple minutes, we'll allow you on, and you need to go set a new key and get another device set up. So that's the purpose of the recovery key. It's a one-time use, and it would prevent the requirement to go to your system administrator. But if you don't save your recovery key and you lose your phone, your system administrator, they can take actions to let you get on and create another key and then get back to where you were. So I'm going to take a copy of this, and I normally don't use 1Password, but I thought I had that here just for this demo. So I've created one for iChime demo with my username, and I want to add another field, and there's one-time password. And in this case, I could copy paste because I'm right here. So should be able to do that and save. And right now you can see it's immediately generating a 6-digit number that's going to change every 30 seconds. So I'll go back. Well, I'm going to wait for it to change. Well, maybe I can go fast enough. So we have an F9 button here, and I'll have to go back because it will have changed by now. Will I type in this long password? Presumably I got the password right. All right, so it changed, so write it down. 537938. 537938. And it says check TOP was successful, so that just proved that my 1Password application has the same key, that my UTC time between the system I'm on here and my PC is close enough, so we're good. That user's set up, so then they might also copy this out and set up their key or save their recovery key.
No.
So at that point, they're done. They just need now the administrator to require that they use it. So I could sign off and back on again, and I don't have to provide it because the administrator has not turned this on yet.
Tim, is that 90 seconds, give or take? Is that something? Is there a system setting for that, or is that? And then that's to handle latency, I guess. Is that the?
No, at this time there's no configuration for that. That we have a built-in amount of time. Let's see. There were a couple different things places I could go here. Might as well go turn it on for you. So normally you'd be maybe using Navigator, but so I'm signed in as an administrator over on this other panel. So we have authentication methods here, and I can add in TOP for iChime. So now if I come back to my other window, sign off, and maybe I'll shrink that so I can see my 6-digit value being generated. So should have picked a shorter non-compliant password for this. So first I'm not going to hit anything to see that I did this right. And we got an authentication information for users not correct. That might be because iChime doesn't exist. That might be because the password doesn't exist, or it might be because I needed a TOP. We don't tell you the difference. So I'll go ahead and now type that big long password in again. And now page down to the additional factor field that is on here, and I got to go up here and refresh again because it doesn't say live. All right, so there's my new number, 928018. And now I got on. I mean, that's as basic as you can get. You set up a key for that user. The administrator turned it on that it was required, and now you had to enter it in on that screen, or you couldn't get on the system. Just like with a password, if you do too many attempts with it incorrect, your password will get disabled because you have the wrong TOP or the wrong password. So those same rules that you might have configured with a system value would apply here.
Are there any enhancements to the audit journal for this to capture changes that are specific to MFA?
Yes. Yeah. Let's see here if this is still active. What's this one? I thought I had AES up somewhere. Run SQL script. So the password audit record, the PW got another subtype. I can go here and I should actually, if I go rerun this query, be able to see what we just did. All right, so I ran this query for the PW. Then let me see if this was me doing anything. Well, it's actually going to have to go to the end here. All right, so we can see right there, iChime just tried to get in without a tote-p set. There were some other ones, if the password wasn't valid, you know. So the existing audit records are there, but yes, now, because we don't tell you on the message that it was tote-p, but an administrator with access to the audit records can figure out why their user's not able to get on. So.
And that's very powerful right there. I mean, that right there is a very significant thing, because that might help you if you feel your system is being potentially hacked, perhaps, and things like that. You might have some more insight from the audit journal.
So I just showed you how to set that up from the green screen. However, that's not how we would anticipate most users would set this up. I like to do it there because it really showed, you know, lower level. And if I go look at, let's see. If we look here, you'll see I have a key set. When did I last set it? We don't ever cause you to change your key, but you might have some policy in your own corporation that says you need to change your key every 3 years or whatever. We're not part of that, but you can query this value and get your users to go change that key. But we're not an active participant. And then you can see my activation or my authentication method is star none. And I have none is the default, so that I have no interval, so then it's not possible for me to have any minutes remaining in my interval. So where you'd have had a 10-minute interval, iChime, after I signed in that first time, that would have been 10, and it would just keep counting down until it gets to 0. And that's how we determine if you needed something more than your password on those subsequent authentications. But I was going to show, since it's not the preferred way, so let's see, iChime 2. So iChime 2, I believe this profile exists. It has no access to Navigator. It's a plain user, no special authorities, and it has no tote-p key. Let's see if I pick the right user profile here. All right, so even though you had no authority to Navigator, move this off my screen. You can see up here on the top, you get a warning saying, well, you are restricted, but we're letting you get to this one very specific page so that you can manage your MFA key. And so I'm going to take the first option here to generate, which is equal to that star gen that I did on the green screen. I could also enter a key. That's the second option that came from a different device. Or I could just be testing that my new device works here. But we're going to take the first one. And it looks similar, but we have this really cool fancy QR code there. And you guys can all race off with your phone right now, because I'm live here. You could create an account into IBM Verify or Google Authenticator or whatever it is with iChime 2 profile for this test system I'm using, and that would put it right inside the app, and you wouldn't have to copy paste anything or type anything in. So there's so much power behind that QR code. That's why we had Navigator re-architected to let you get to this page, even if you couldn't do anything else with Navigator, that you could get to this page.
Wow.
So, so I could pull out my phone and show you that number going, but those who really cared, you probably already did, and you have a number going. And then I guess I suppose did anyone do that. I'm gonna type in my password again.
I'm doing it right now. I guess there's a lot of people are doing
I
it.
guess if anyone did it, you could shout out the number and I'd enter it in and see if it worked.
Eight 40364.
Success. MFA code is valid. So there, you know whatever app you used worked in your UTC time, and hopefully maybe you're in a different one of those different continents, so you're clearly in a different time zone, hopefully.
New York.
So one time zone over, but still. So that worked, and we can exit out of here. I didn't go set it up myself. So again, that's all they can do. So now they're on this screen. They can't go and do anything else. So another thing now, I'll show. Find the right thing here. I timed out on that one, so I'm going to sign in with a different profile and start to show a little bit of Navigator here. So if you do have authority to Navigator, you'd come into this, not just the MFA page. So under my work, I can get to that same page, the Manage My MFA key. So if you have no authority, that's all you get. If you do have authority, you have to manage to navigate there yourself. Now, because I'm signed in as an administrator, I can go to the Security sub-tab, and then we have kind of call it an MFA configuration hub. So I'm going to click into that hub. Something I haven't talked about up to this point, but there is a system security attribute that you'd turn on to say, did I want that green screen sign-on to have that additional field? The only reason we show that is because on this system, we set it to enabled and then IPL'd, and that's when the default changed. That's the setting that ACS and Navigator are querying off of to know to put up that extra field that you saw. And that's any other application in the world who can get there can query that value to know if they should be providing that extra value field. Doesn't mean anyone had to put any value in there. If you put a value in and you don't need one, we'll ignore it. So it doesn't matter if a user's uncertain and they type something in. If you didn't need it, you won't fail just because you put something in the field. So again, you can manage some of those values and prerequisites around MFA from this little hub here. If I go under users, kind of some preset queries here where does an MFA key exist? And then I'm going to query for no. And this is what a system administrator would do. They would come out here after maybe, I've said it can take up to 20 minutes and you can have a whole department set up for this. That assumes the security administrator knew what they were doing ahead of time. But they have a meeting and they say, all of you sign on, type this command or go to this Navigator screen and set up your key. And we'll walk through it. I've done it with a group of people. I mean, it doesn't take much for them to type, change TOP key prompt *gen and do something, or preferably do a QR code. But I came in here and there's multiple things here, and so iChime shows up in here along with some others that haven't been set up. So the power here, and I won't go do it this way, but I've now highlighted 2 people. I could have highlighted all of them. I do a right click, and if I click enable users for MFA authentication right here, Navigator will go out and turn on *TOP for all of them that you highlighted. So again, I'm an admin. I got a 40-person department meeting. I have you all go set your key up. And then I run my query and I see, yep, you all have a key that exists. I highlight you all, I click this button and then say, okay, try to sign in, and you'll have to use your TOTP. That's how fast it is for that basic level. Now, there's a lot of other considerations on what kind of applications they might use and whether or not they might need an interval or something, but at its core, it's that quick and easy.
Some questions, Tim, please?
Sure.
So in your scenario you just gave us, you said that there were 40 users, for example, and they type that command in, but many shops don't allow the user to have command line access. So is there a particular, what would you do? Give them a menu option to run at that point, or maybe put an initial profile one time to get them started?
Well, for those people without command line access, they can use the navigator to get to the QR code.
That's the workaround.
To set their, yeah. Okay. So they would have them point at navigator if they weren't using green screen. Because we certainly are, the recommendation is use navigator if you're setting it up on your phone. Because, the only questions from the field we'll get is, oh, my TOTP doesn't authenticate, and our first thing is going to say, well, reset your key up because you must have typed it wrong. Because this works, right? We just saw it, it worked with somebody in New York able to look at my code and is generating the right number. So absolutely use Navigator.
Another question I got, Tim, was once somebody is credentialed, validated, I should say, now they log in within another minute or so to another session, are they going to be challenged again to type another code in, or is there some period of time where they're still under the umbrella?
No, each time you, let's say I click this on here, this would be the same as turning star TOTP on, and we're to save this like we did before. Every time your password is presented to the system, we have to have that 6-digit number. Now, the one thing where that isn't true is with this optional interval. So this is how I would set it there. There is a different field on the green screen on the change user profile. It's only the administrator who can set this. The individual user doesn't get to pick. They might say, well, set it 8 hours. I want to sign in once and play for free all day. No, you'd have to understand that you had a use case that said, I need 10 minutes to go do some specific actions where you're not going to prompt me. Again, not as secure as always requiring it, but that's one of those many configuration levels we've provided to try to bring value to as many use cases as possible.
I know there's another scenario that I read somewhere about appending, putting a colon, appending it.
Right. You may have... So I showed, you could see Navigator had that extra field. The sign-up panel had the extra field. But let's say you're out in FileZilla or any 99% of the applications in the world today will not know that there could be an extra field, and they'll have no architected plumbing to flow an extra field. So if you enter in your password, colon, and the 6-digit number and hit enter, that will flow through, and when that password gets to the operating system to be authenticated, verified, it's at that point that we will back parse from the end of the string until we find the separator, and then we'll treat that as your TOTP, and then we'll treat what's in front of the colon as your password. So that's what you'd have to do to an HTTP server application right now. It doesn't have an extra field that can flow if you were doing basic authentication. So that there's a large number of applications where that's what you'd use. We do know that there are some applications who do something to that password in between when you enter it before it gets to us. If they do something to it, then there's a chance it's not going to work. We won't see the value the way we need it. The primary thing there is password substitution. For people familiar with that, you can't have a password substitution and do this. And then the other risk you run, one of the biggest problems we have in this ecosystem is so many things use a cached password. They took your password and they have it cached securely or maybe not securely at all, and it's sitting somewhere, and then they're connecting to the operating system again and again, and they're providing that value. Were you to put that tote-p appended there and save it, well, next thing you know, you go do something 5 minutes later and it auto retries, you get your password disabled because you've got an invalid password and an invalid tote-p cached away somewhere. So that is a consideration for people if you've got applications that are caching things that's a one negative outcome you could have. So just something to be aware of there.
Would that be the same consideration then? Somebody put a comment in the chat here about things like application development, like RDI, for example, or Code for I, for example, when they're doing programming, and they need to type in their password. Is that would they put a colon there? Is that a perfect use case for it right there?
That's where they would put it in, and I would assume then they'd be getting prompted each time that was needed, because if they saved it after a period, after that time frame, it wouldn't be valid, and that could lead to rapid retry, disable sign-on attempts, and disable your profile. So hopefully they're prompting for it each time they would need it. The real key is for applications to start to get a persistent, authenticated connection. Start to have a tether that allows the operating system to know this is one unit of work. And that's what we've done with like Navigator and ACS. We created a new host connection server that front ends the other host servers. And we connect one time to this new TLS only host connection server, provide our password and our tote-p, and that connection never goes away. And then that application like ACS, it makes another 100 connections to the host servers over 3 minutes because you're doing a bunch of different stuff. All of those connections are made over the initial connection. So we don't need your password, we don't need your tote-p because you're still you. And then we create new TCP connections through that port for each one of the servers you want to use. So we're not single-threaded, gated, but we have that persistent connection. And that's what allows ACS, Navigator, DCM, those that have leveraged the host connection server, you can sign on one time and it's going to sit there and do all kinds of things and talk to the database server and remote command server, file server. You don't have to get prompted, but yet it's secure because you've got that tethered connection. If that tethered connection drops for whatever reason, you'd have to authenticate again. And that's what you'd want to happen. If there was a network glitch, okay, you're going to have to authenticate again. And we'd want that because that would resemble an attack profile. That, there was a little hiccup and now they're coming in. No. So again, that's why if you have a administrative user who has all objects, SecAdmin, they live in ACS and Navigator and DCM all day long, and maybe they're doing 5250. You saw, I demonstrated that. That user can run with the star tote-p and no interval. They're locked down, and again, that's why I say that's the kind of profiles to start with to enable this.
And someone asked me again. I'm ask the question for them. Same concept then for ODBC, JDBC. Similar concept.
So there are those two don't play well in this space. They They're just not part of that. They're a little less friendly. You'd need to be using the password colon tote P, and they don't use the host connection server, so they don't benefit from that. So those type of applications will have to figure out how to make that work. Q file serve 400 is a good example of an application that does not work with this. That is completely dependent on a cache password with no way for the user to be prompted for a TOP. So if you're doing something with Q file serve 400, you have to find a way where that user signs on and activates an interval, and then that user is able to be connecting to that system with only their password, right? So there are considerations like that based on the different applications used, and that's why there's that individual user profile configuration. Some of them can be star none here with no interval. Some have 10 minutes. Some might have a half hour. Really varies. But again, we knew we couldn't make this work for everything. We didn't let the lack of Q file serve 400, which we knew about right away, prevent us from going forward with a solution that would work for the other use cases.
Tim, are there any particular shops, environments, industries, or anything else that are perhaps better examples or better use cases for this? Or is it just anybody, because MFA is such a good thing, and it's good for anybody?
I think it's good for anyone. I think some of the sweet spot can be some of the smaller shops. I think about my dentist shop who got hit with ransomware. Well, they probably weren't hit with it on IBMi to begin with, but in that environment, if they got like 6, 7 employees, they're not interested in paying for a big fancy MFA solution and don't have any team to build one of their own. Whoever's, the admin playing the role of security administrator, that person could fairly easily go through what I just did here, right? They could watch even this video and know enough to require MFA for signing on to the system for some or all of those users. Again, depends on what some of the applications are, but at least the ones with admin. So I think that's a great use case. Maybe not with some of the others. Some of the bigger ones who have to meet the requirements, turning this on for SST, DST. I think that's a sweet spot, even though they might have had a solution. And for everyone else who doesn't already have a solution, it's at no cost. You get 7.6, at least you play around with it and see that you can make it work and just continue to expand the number of users that you can protect. But again, start with the ones with special authorities and go from there.
Is there a particular key security level that have to be at? Or we'll work on anything?
Yeah, we've got a pretty rigid set of requirements here. Maybe I can go back to that hub real quick while I'm talking about it. The reason, did it not go? Oh, I guess I'm already there. I needed to go up here. The reason in the hub we need security level 40 or 50. Can't be at 30. And we need you at password level 4. And part of that was cost of development to make that all the special logic we do is tied into, well, you need to already be at password level 4, and then we do all of the other logic here. So for anyone not going to be on 7.6 in the near future, one thing you can do is if you're on 7.5, get yourself to password level 4 first, because if you're not, that could take some time. And again, hopefully you're at level 40 or 50 already, but again, that's something you can work on before you get to 7.6 so that that's not a barrier.
Yeah. I know all too many shops that are still running at 30.
And I know there's a lot running at 0 for password level.
Wow, you're right.
I
Exactly.
just
Well, suffice it to say that so that would be a typical migration path. If you're looking to do this, these are two clear metrics right now you need to identify. I mean, two values that you must be at. So, and to change either one of these to go from 20 to 40, that's not an insignificant thing. You need to do some testing and research and things like that.
right, yes.
I think.
And that's why it's nice that you can already be doing that on 7.5 before you get there.
Well, so I have so many questions, Tim. I have a feeling we could probably talk for the next 4 hours. But I do know that I know you have another meeting, and then very coming up soon. I wanted. Are there any advice that you have for anybody? I mean, other than just do it and take care of the prerequisites. Are there any final advice you want to give to anybody, to us on this meeting, or to any users? I mean, other than just do it. It's not. I mean, I saw 20 minutes. You did it within 20 minutes. What's the learning curve to get to that 20-minute spot?
Yeah, I think it varies with everyone on to get to that 20 minutes. There's a new section in the IBM documentation for multi-factor authentication. I'll just put in a plug. I have, I think, 4 sessions at Power Up, and I will be deep diving. Here I didn't talk at all about what SST DST looks like, so I think I got a 20-minute session where I'll demo that because it's a little different. Has no interval, has no QR code, so I'll touch upon that. I didn't get into a second level of this. What I just showed was this TOP for all the password authentications. But we also discovered there's a lot of people who are able to get on a system without using a password. They may be using Kerberos, they may be using public-private key with SSH, and to the operating system, that doesn't count as an authentication. That is above and outside of the profile. By default, we allow that still with this TOP. Again, that was a decision. I had a lot of conversations with advisory groups about what to do, have it be blocked, not blocked. We were going to have a TOP level 2, level 3, stuff like that got talked about. In the end, we created a new function usage that you can use to further protect, like, for example, me. I'm an administrator. I got star TOP, I'm star none. But any other administrator with all object who has access to my profile could get a profile handle with a special value without providing a password. I call that impersonation. And really that doesn't fit this MFA world where you had to have 2 credentials to prove you're human Tim. And meanwhile, Charlie was able to go and run a job and do some work as Tim because he had that authority. And there's a lot of applications in the world where they are dependent on that. That's how they do things. So we didn't block them to begin with. But our recommendation is add Tim as restricted to this new function usage so that no longer can Charlie with his all object pretend to be Tim. So again, that's another level of consideration. But by doing that, you just said, well, Tim can't do Kerberos. Tim can't do SSH unless he does it with a password, :TOP. So that's another level here. That takes more than the 20 minutes to think about, can you block someone? But we know that, so we added new audit warning records. If you think about before you would go to security level 40, you can run and see if it would flag something while you're at 30. You can say, turn it on for Tim. We're going to audit for the next 30 days. How many things does Tim do that would fail if we protected his profile from being impersonated by anyone? And that gives that administrator the power to comfortably say, I'm going to protect Tim that way now, or I can't protect Tim that way. And now you start to work on the applications to figure out, well, can they behave different so they fit in this world better? So again, just another consideration. Didn't really dive into it here, but if you go to the link I had there's some good information on that. That link also would point out some of the known things that don't work well with the StarTOP or require an interval or things like that. Not an exhaustive list, but it starts to give you an idea before you go start turning this on for a bunch of different users.
Tim, you have completely succeeded in answering all the questions that I had without me even asking them. So congratulations to you on that.
You might be able to. I've given a pitch kind of like this a lot of times.